Hey guys, I'm Josh, and in honor of the new Aquaman movie that's going to be releasing soon, I'm going to be just joshing around making a trident that doesn't really look like anything from the movie. In fact, it really doesn't have anything to do with the movie at all. Hashtag clickbait! At some point in every person's life, someone is going to ask that person to make a trident for them. Right? No? No, I'm the only one? Okay. But if you ever are asked to make a trident for someone, your first thought is probably going to be something like this. While your second thought is, how the heck am I going to make this thing? Well, this is how I'm going to make mine. For the handle of the trident, I am using a shovel handle which was purchased at either Lowe's or Home Depot, I can't remember which. But the first thing I'm doing is cutting off this pesky reinforcement collar thing. And the next thing I'm doing is drawing up a plan of how I'm going to make the head. Because as I've already said, I had no idea how I was going to do this thing going into it. I needed to have a strong base for the head that I could attach the tines to and the handle or staff portion. So I ended up using a 2x4. Right here I'm drawing out the curves and tracing it onto a piece of paper so I can transfer the same curve to the other side of the head. This ended up looking like a weird, oddly shaped bat signal or bat symbol. I don't know, it's pretty funky looking. But it'll make sense here in a bit. For the tines, or points of the trident, I am using a 2x3, which I'm cutting down to size on my table saw. For the points, I wanted to have a nice 1.5 inch square piece of stock. So the first thing I did was skin off the chamfered edge on the one side, and now I'm just cutting it to size. For each point, I cut the stock down to roughly 13.25 inch. And here I'm just cutting off a little bit of the tapered end of the shovel handle. In order to ensure a nice, secure, snug fit of the shovel handle into the head, I used a Forstner bit with the same diameter as the tapered end. Here I'm taking each piece of stock that I'm using for the points and I'm sanding them smooth so they're all uniform. While I had the belt sander up and running, I went ahead and took all of the glossy finish off the handle. I did this to ensure a nice adhesion of the wood filler that I'm going to be coating over the entire trident, which you'll see in a bit. My friend who requested for me to make this trident for him was very specific in how he wanted the overall style and the color and the appearance of it to end up looking. So just to give you an idea of what I was using as a reference, here you go. That is actually a minifigure, or minifig, from Dungeons & Dragons. And I'm trying to match the same style and the same curvature for the points on the trident. I used my bandsaw to cut out all of the different pieces. Even though it's probably hard for you to tell what I'm doing since my giant head is in the way. Heat! Move! Sorry about that, I'll try to get better camera angles for next time. For each piece, I am running them on the belt sander to achieve a nice, smooth contour. Again, you probably couldn't see it since my giant head was in the way, but I did cut each shape a little bit larger than what I ended up wanting it to be. This is just to ensure that I didn't cut it too small, because as I'm learning with doing this woodworking, it's always better to have a little bit more material to take away than too much taken away. Hey, you remember how the base of the head had a weird bat symbol shape? This is why. I wanted each attachment area for the points to be square, not only for uniformity, but also for glue coverage. Well, this is a much better camera angle. Here you can actually see that I'm cutting each point down to a specific shape, before once again contouring them on the belt sander. Geez, you know, these prongs ended up really sharp, and I think they'd be equally good in a vampire hunting kit. For the attachment of each point to the Trident head, I not only ran a screw up from the bottom, but I used water-resistant glue, since this is a Trident, and this ensured a nice, tight, solid construction. One thing that I struggled with was the alignment of the points on the head. And I'm sure that this was due to me not achieving a perfectly straight cut, or maybe sanding a little bit too much off on one side. Whatever it was, I kind of struggled with it a bit because it was a real pain in the butt. But my solution for it was to use the pieces that I cut off of the points as shims to straighten them out into place. And one thing that I learned is that if you try to force it into place and apply too much pressure, this happens.
Oh no.
This didn't end up being too big of a deal though, because once I got the middle prong back into place, I was able to glue the broken portion back down as well. However, as I've already said, this alignment was a bit of a challenge, because I tried the best I could to get the prongs in alignment on both an X and a Y axis. In attaching the handle into place, I used a lot of glue, both on the end of the handle and into the socket in which I was gluing it. I clamped the head down and then I tapped the end of the handle in place using a dead blow hammer. After that, I ran a screw the whole way through both the head and the handle. This resulted in a very solid attachment for the handle. The next step involved me smearing peanut butter all over the Trident. Yeah, I'm just joking. It's actually wood filler. The purpose of the wood filler is to both hide the joints of where I attach the prongs to the base and the handle to the base, but also to add some additional contouring to the Trident. I smeared this stuff on in a pretty thick layer. And the reasoning for this is because, as my friend requested, this thing needed to look like it was on the bottom of the ocean for like hundreds of years, with layers of really old, crusty, grimy oxidization. I don't know what the word is, but it's supposed to look like it's extremely oxidized. So what I'm doing here is sanding down the Trident in almost the same fashion that you would do a knockdown pattern on drywall, with more focus on leaving a lot more imperfections. I wanted this thing to end up with a lot of texture and life. So I went back over it and added little random spots of grooves or pockmarks or little cavities here and there. I had to touch up a couple spots where initially I had applied too much wood filler. But after giving this thing a couple days of drying time, I went over it all with a gray primer. One thing that I learned way back in the first video I ever did, which was the Holy Grail, is that paint covers a good bit better on wood filler than it does on bare wood. And that was another reason that I wanted to apply the wood filler all over this Trident, because I didn't want any of the wood grain to show through, which, as you can see here, it doesn't. Next up, I applied this satin jade spray paint over the entire thing. This is the closest tone or color that I could find to oxidized copper or bronze, because again, per my friend's request, this Trident was going to look like a dark bronze with a lot of oxidation. You know, I'm done with that word. Anywho, after all the paint was applied and dried, we switched over to the step of weathering. My idea here, again, was to add a lot of life to this thing. Because if I left it all green, it looks like a big Easter decoration or something, like some sort of weird, like, Poseidon version of the Easter Bunny, and nobody wants that. So what I'm doing is I took some hammered bronze spray paint, sprayed it into a cup, and I'm just brushing on into the little grooves and nooks and crannies on this thing. Anyone want to guess how long this part took? It was somewhere between 5 seconds and like 4 years. It was a really long time. I am used to adding details to little pieces, like little small collectibles or props or what have you. This trident is 6 feet long and 13.5 inches wide at the head. So naturally, there was a lot of areas that I needed to touch up. But I was pretty happy with how it was turning out so far. Throughout the process of adding these little details, I did notice in several spots that the wood filler had shrunk a bit and cracked. And this is probably because I applied it in such a thick layer. Next time I do something like this, I'm going to have to remember to apply a thin layer, let it dry, and then apply more to it. But I wasn't worried about it too much because it just added a little bit more character. And now, as you can see, I'm on to my favorite step of customizing any piece, adding the shoe polish. I actually switched back and forth between adding brown and black shoe polish and powdered graphite and some silver and gold pigment powders before I finally achieved what I thought was a good look. Before scuffing up the entire trident with some 400 grit sandpaper to reveal some of that bright green oxidized appearance. And here is the finished trident. Womp womp. Yeah, I have to apologize. I have a very juvenile sense of humor. That other one was just a crappy old pitchfork that I have in my shed. But I'm pretty happy with the actual finished trident. If I were doing one for myself, I probably wouldn't have gone with this style. But this is what my friend requested, and I was happy to oblige. Because I really do feel that it looks like an ancient relic of a different era. But what do you think? Just to give you an idea how big this thing is, I'm 6'4", so it's pretty big. Well, that does it for this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed watching, because I really enjoyed making this trident. This is something that really made me think outside the box and how to make it. I did a lot of research on it before making it, and this is the best method that I could come up with myself. Pretty happy with how it turned out, and I know my friend is happy with it too. If you guys have any suggestions for different weapons or collectibles or props, leave them down in the comments and I'll try to get to them. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.